Do you think your binge eating might be related to something in your childhood? Well, in this video, I'm talking about the inner child and how healing your childhood can help your binge eating disorder. Well, hi, I'm Vanessa McLennan, clinical hypnotherapist, psychotherapist, and I help people with their binge eating and overeating by working on the inner them to help them have a life free from food stress. So if you'd like to know more about inner child healing, keep watching. So what do I mean by our inner child? Well, our inner child is that part of us that still lives within us. So in other words, it's our beliefs, it's our thoughts, it's our emotions, our habits, our behaviours that are still there and present from childhood. So a lot of people think that, we start off as a child, we get to 18, that door closes, the adulthood opens, and we are, totally different people. We're not. We have just, evolved as we go along. But as we evolve, what we learn in childhood just very often stays with us throughout the course of our lives. And when we get to a certain area, or point in our lives where we are doing something that we don't want, like binge eating, we often have to go back and look at what patterns, what thoughts, what we developed as a child to help us, heal the binge eating as to where we are now. So how our behaviours evolve from a child. So when we are in childhood, and if we have traumatic events, or it's what the child perceives to be traumatic, our brains will respond in that way. They will grow and they will nurture, and we will very quickly learn behaviours to, keep us alive, to survive, to keep us free from harm, around, that trauma. And if you're perhaps thinking, yeah, but I didn't have a traumatic childhood, you may not have done, but as a child you may have perceived certain things that were just a bit too overwhelming, or you just couldn't cope with, or it just wasn't as comfortable for you. And as we've evolved, we have somewhere along the way learnt that eating is going to keep us safe, or eating is going to help us, and eating is going to protect us. So that might well have worked really well as children. And then when we've evolved and we get to adulthood, that might not longer be appropriate to us. But as an adult, we can process our feelings, we can then articulate our feelings. We also get to understand, adults from a different perspective. So it could be that, adults were harming us when we were children, or we were just scared of them or fearful of them, or there wasn't, a close relationship with them. And, as adults, we can see it's the other person's, poor behaviour, or they shouldn't be behaving like that, and we can understand why it's perhaps making us feel like that. As children, we don't have the ability to be able to do that, so we're left, really confused, or making up, our beliefs about some things that are just distorted and not right, because we don't have that ability as children to know and understand what's going on. So of course that is what stays with us all the way through to adulthood. But what it comes out as is, our binge eating, and then we don't know why, because it has just got so lost, but also so suppressed by our mind to protect us, that we're often then going, why am I here? Why am I doing this? We've no idea how that relates to our childhood. So how does it develop into binge eating? Well, it often, does not start out with binge eating. As I say, from a child, you might just learn along the way that eating, some sweets or crisps, whatever it is, feels good. It might be that you're allowed to have it. It might be that you weren't allowed to have it and you found a way to sneak it. So it's like, what's the pattern there for you that caused you to perhaps turn to food? It might not have been when you were a child. You might have learnt it in your teens, you might have learnt it in your early 20s. It's just, when did that pattern start to come about for you that you perhaps noticed it? But it's knowing what was happening in your childhood that might have caused that. So it would have started out perhaps very subtly, you just eating perhaps a bit more, you just eating when you needed comfort, you just eating when you were bored. And then it evolves that way because the associations that we make when we eat, we perhaps feel good. It feels, a void, or it suppresses feelings. It can also then, suppress memories because we are in that moment of eating. And of course, the more that we do it and those associations, get stronger, the more that the behaviour keeps going. And of course, then before we know it, we perhaps then get to a point where we're like, I'm putting on weight, I don't like this. Then you go into, I've got to restrict myself, I've got to go on a diet. And then this is where the pattern of binge eating can really evolve, because the more then we start restricting, the more feelings come in that if we've eaten something that we shouldn't, we may feel guilty or beat ourselves up, or we've done something terrible, and then we feel rubbish. So we start turning to food because we want to feel better about ourselves. Then we turn to food, then we eat more, and then we feel guilty, and then we start to restrict ourselves. So you can see it's a whole cycle that each time we repeat it, it just gets stronger and stronger, it gets bigger, it gets more on either side, more restriction, more binging, that we can get to a point where we're like, it has got to stop, but we don't know how it got there or even how to stop. So how do you connect to your inner child to start healing? So the process of, when we're in this state of binge eating, we have to stop it from somewhere. A good way is then by reversing and going back to really looking at our childhood and what was going on for us. So this is, great to be able to do it with a therapist, where you feel supported. And it's a process where you go back and you imagine meeting the younger you, the child, at whatever age is right for you. And it's developing this relationship with the child, with you as the adult, and being able to listen and be there and just really connect to that child and understand for that child what was happening for them. So it's really providing a space and a comfortable place for this young child still within us to open up and to tell us what was going on, and for you as an adult to see what wasn't right with this child, so that in a way that you can heal all the pain and the hurt that the child is feeling. And of course it's done in a very, loving, trustful, supported place, so that any emotions that are coming up for you, the therapist is there to help you process them and talk you through them. Now this all takes, time, and how long it takes is, entirely up to you. But I think it's really sort of important not to rush it, not to force something, because that can have a detrimental effect. You might not be ready to face certain things, and that is okay. But the more that you try to push, or force it, it could cause you, to have, again, inadvertent feelings that you really don't want, that you're not able to process because it's just too overwhelming for you. So it's, just like anybody else you meet, you meet somebody for the first time, you don't automatically quickly rush into loads and loads of things. A lot of the time, friendships, they develop slowly over time as you get to know one another, and that's just like this inner child. But it's even more important that the inner child within us, so it's all done in our imagination, is felt, being able to trust that they can start to open up and talk. And really what we are doing is we are starting to see ourselves with love and treat ourselves with lots of, love and care and support for ourselves. We may not have been treated that way before in the past. So by bringing this in, it's helping, I suppose, this child, start to feel nurtured and being able to flourish. And eventually what that does is they stop then going to the outside to feel that we can then generate those feelings ourselves. So we want to be able to start connecting with our inner child, and here are 3 ways that you can do that at home. So first way is find a picture of yourself as a child. And if you really have no pictures of yourself as a child, can you imagine, yourself at a certain age as a child? And so you're just going to look at that picture, and you're just going to start by communicating to that picture, or just noticing, what was lovely about this little child, what was so, gorgeous, and what good qualities, did they have. So you're looking at all the lovely, beautiful things this child had. So you're learning to feel warmth and empathy towards this child. So it's recognising that just how young and perhaps vulnerable you were, but also how lovely you were. second thing you can do is write a letter to your child. So this is keeping it really simple, but you're just going to write a letter to your child, and it's, just a short paragraph to say, I'm here for you. I'm, as an adult, I want you to know that, this is how your life turns out, the good parts of your life, but I want you to know that as an adult, I'm here to listen to you. And then eventually what you can do is imagine you yourself as a child writing a letter back to you as an adult. And it's quite good to do it with your left hand because it brings you into that childlike state. And again, it's only going to be maybe a couple of sentences because, children aren't going to write long essays. And it might be just whatever comes to you as feeling as a child of what you might want to say to connect to that adult. It could be a request for help. It could be just please listen. It could be something that you wanted, or it could just be something that you were doing. It's just no judgment. Just let it flow. And a third thing you can do is just start by being kind to yourself every single day. Just one act of kindness every single day. Often our lives are just so busy, or we're harsh to ourselves, and we beat ourselves up, and we're really then trying to reverse that to be loving and kind to ourselves. And so what could that be? And that could be just something as simple as saying something nice to ourselves, just by saying, oh, look, it's okay. Do you know, I like you as you are. Just, I love and accept myself as I am. It's quite a good statement to make, but it's also quite good to get into that love and kindness for ourselves. So let me know in the comments below, what do you think about inner child healing? Have you tried it before? Would you like to try it? Okay, thank you.